And if you want to start. Hello, I'm Callandra, and I'm going to go over how to use a Cricut Maker to engrave. And there are many different ways to do it, but this is the method that I like to use that helps with being able to line things up. And we're going to use a shape, and we're going to do some different things with it so that it won't actually show up on your final engraving, but it will help you with being able to line everything up. Let me bring up this screen. Okay, there we go. Okay, so at the same time, I've already have a project partially in place. But the first thing that I would do is pull up a shape. In this case, I'm setting it up to engrave on an acrylic keychain thing. So I'm going to go to the shape panel. And that is going to take a moment here. Okay. There we go. And I'm going to select a circle. This one's going to automatically come up as being 2" by 2", which is fine that I need is a 2" circle. If you needed to change the size, you can go ahead and do that next, which you can just go up here and to where the size is, and you can change and adjust it there, or by grabbing the corners and changing it. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the operation. Its default should be basic cut. I'm going to change it to score. The reason why I'm doing that is because when you get to the final screen right before you load the mat in, you will have the option to be able to change it from the scoring wheel to the stylus. And the stylus goes in slot A. The engraving tool and scoring wheels go in slot B. And you don't actually have to have anything in slot A for it to run. So what we're going to do is we're going to have this shape as our guide, but because we're not going to put anything in slot A in the machine, it's not going to actually appear on your thing. You're just using it as a guide for your engraving. And so then the next thing I'm going to do is select the image that I want to do, which you can do from the images or uploading something. I already have something over here that I'm just going to re-highlight. Let's take a moment to show up. There we go. Okay, so I have my image. I'm going to select Phoenix, and then from the operation, I'm going to change it to engrave. Now this is just a simple engraving. You see how when you change it to engrave, it ends up putting a line, the double line. So that is going to show. If you make something small enough, sometimes you can get that to go away. There are other different ways that you could do to fill things, but I'm not going to go into that right now. I'm just going to resize this to fit into my circle. And what I like to do to help make things easier for me for lining things up is I'm going to try to move the circle. I like to put it essentially in between things, not, between like 4 and 6. I'm doing have the lines going right in the middle, and I put the cross and be able to center things better. And I'm going to take my Phoenix, and then I can use those lines for helping guide where I want to put it. And it's not going to be perfectly centered and balanced because since this is going to be a keychain, my blank has a tiny hole up at the top. And so I need to make room, leave room to be able to put the keychain in when it's done. Okay, so at this point, to make sure that these two items stay together for the next step, I'm going to go down, well, first I'm going to select all, and then go down to the bottom of the layers panel and where it says attach, and attach them together. So that's going to mean on the next step, it's not going to try to separate them. It's going to keep them together. So then since this is all that I would want to put in it, then we're going to go to the Make It screen. It's going to take a while for that to come up. Now, there are different materials that you can engrave on. You can engrave on acrylic, you can engrave on metal, you can engrave on leather. The important thing to note is that it needs to be generally about 2 millimeters, sometimes 2.5, but it needs to be, if it's 3 millimeter, it's going to be too thick. So you need to watch that when you're looking at engraving blanks because a lot of the acrylic ones are 1/8 inch, which is 3 millimeter, and that's too thick for the Cricut. But 2 to 2.5 is good. So on this screen, the next step would depend on what I'm engraving on. If I'm engraving on metal or leather, I'm not going to mirror it. But if I'm engraving on acrylic, I mirror it because that will put the rough side from the engraving on the back and it'll give a smoother finish, especially if you're doing a light up lamp. So with the acrylic, it looks better if the rough side is on the back side of it. And you can move this around to where you want it on your mat. And you need to make sure that where you put it on the screen is where you've taped down the item on your mat. And I will show some pictures of what that looks like here in a moment. So what I like to do to try to help keep with centering everything is I do the same thing of placing it in between. So here I have between the 3 and the 5 and the 2 and the 4 going the other direction so that I can use that line to help guide and get me as close to the center as I can. Things will be a little bit off sometimes, but this is a method that I found that works with trying to line things up. And so at this point is where I would make sure that I have the item taped down to my mat to correspond to where it is on the screen. And then on the next step, continue is where it'll configure with your machine. So that'll take a moment to bring that up because I want to show what it looks like of how to change the tools because that will be an important step with this. Okay. Let me make sure that my machine is on. That is also a very important step, of course, the whole thing of, is it on? Is it plugged in? So I'm going to cancel that and try that again and see what happens. So hopefully it will work this time. Now, being able to move things around on the mat is one of the reasons why I like using the computer. The phone, it may just be my phone app. I can't move things around on the mat. And so it makes it difficult. And I don't like it when things are put to that top corner because there's a little bit of an area that the machine doesn't recognize. And so I can't line things up accurately with that being in there. So that's why I like to be able to move things. Okay, so my computer is going to give me some problems today. I can't connect. But what would happen is if everything loaded here, it's going to show you all your tools across here. And next to the tools, or where it says tools, there's going to be a drop-down menu. And so for the one for scoring wheel, you're going to select the drop-down menu for that one for the slot A. And then you're going to, or not slot A, but for the engraving, and you're going to change it to the scoring stylus. And that'll allow you that then you can load your mat and it'll act like it's going to do the scoring, but because you don't actually put anything into slot A, it's not going to do anything. And then it'll go on to the next operation with the engraving tool in slot B. And so that's how you can easily get things to line up and get things to fit on your shape and see how things are going to look without having to actually draw that circle shape on something or have it cut or engrave on that. So I'm going to stop this part and I'm going to bring up some pictures of what it looks like taped on the mat. Let's take a moment there. Okay, let me pull that up here. Sorry, it's giving me some issues here. Let me pull up pictures. There we go. Okay. My computer is being a little slow at the moment here. All right, working on trying to pull up picture here. So with many of the metal tags and the acrylic blanks, there's going to be a protective film on it. You're going to want to peel it away from one side of it first. I actually find it best to leave it on the back until you're done with the engraving, but you want to make sure that you peel it off of the front side, the top side that you're going to be engraving on. So that's what this is showing, where I'm peeling back that a little bit. And so when you get the blanks and they look cloudy, it's because they have a protective layer on there. And this is showing where it's centered on here, of lining up where I want things to be. And that's the little hole. This also shows where I've had issues in the past that things moved out of the way and engraved on the mat directly. Okay, so this is showing taping. I'm using masking tape. I do have a preference on what tape that I like best. I do like the Duck brand Clean Release. I find that it holds better than some other brands that I've tried. And where you have to be very careful on this is a firm grip mat. It still needs tape to hold it in place because the engraving is going to move everything around and there's going to be a lot of vibrations. And so you need it to really stay in place. But you also have to make sure that you don't tape over where the engraving tool needs to go. So you have to be very careful. I just barely have it on the edges on the side. On the top, I is where I can get the best coverage because I know that I have it set away from where the hole is going to be, and then the bottom, but I do like to have it overlap on the edges, and that helps get a firmer hold on it. Some people like to use double-sided tape. That's an option too. I just know this is easy to get and doesn't cost very much to get this tape. You can get in most stores and tape in place. Now, I have found that for me personally with my machine, I try not to do more than 3 at a time on the same mat because I found that anything longer than that, the tape might start giving out, starts moving, and you get a lot more misses of things that don't engrave all the way. And so that's just for me. And also, sometimes it depends on how complex the image is too that you're engraving. Sometimes if it's really complex and it's going to take a long time, like the ones I've done for my Kingdom's Heraldry is a very large file, and that one I can only do one at a time just because it takes a very long time to do that. And so it just depends on what you're doing. You can do text. Just remember to keep in mind whether you're mirroring or what you're doing, what you're engraving on. There are lots of different things that you can engrave on. I mean, have where I engraved on a pie server, and I've seen people engrave on spatulas, and it is safe, but you want to clean it up fairly well to make sure there's no shards of metal. And how I clean things up at the end, it'll have a lot of loose little pieces of metal or acrylic, is I take the masking tape and just kind of stick that over the engraving spots, and that will get rid of a lot of the little files easily, the little filey pieces, and to clean everything up for you. And then you end up with this. This is the rough side. So this is my smooth side, but this is the project that I was showing in the example. And this is searchable in Cricut under Phoenix Keychain or searching with my name, Miranda Moore. It is a file using a Design Space Access image, so it's in there. And I like that Phoenix for different things for Amtgard stuff, that it works for what we're doing. And that's all I have. If you want to stop recording and we can have some questions.